Hi everybody, my name is Keeley and welcome back to my reading nook. I am super excited to be talking to you today about my January TBR, which is so exciting because I had like a really fun time picking out my TBR for this month, and that's kind of how I do like a check-in with how I'm feeling about reading in general, is how excited I am to pick out my TBR for the month. And this month I was really jazzed. So I feel like that bodes well for the start of my 2022 reading. And I hope that you're having a really good start to your 2022 reading. Yeah, I chose 4 books on this list, and I also thought about picking out an audiobook memoir, and I'm in between a few. So I am in between I Am by Maggie O'Farrell, but I'm considering actually getting a physical copy of that because I think the way that it's illustrated on the first page of every chapter is really cool. But yeah, if you have any good memoir recommendations, I've been thinking about getting an audiobook version that I can like listen to while I walk to class and stuff like that, because sometimes it can be tough to like find specific sit down reading time once the classes start during the semester, but I feel like if I had an audiobook, it would make things a little bit easier. So that's just a note to begin, is that I might add a memoir on top of this, but you will see if I do that in my January wrap up. Yeah, but I figure we can just get into it. I am so excited to talk about these books. Okay, so the first one is Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. And for those of you who watched my favorite books of 2021 video, you would see that probably my favorite book of 2021 was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. So I love Celeste Ng, and I really want her to write more books because these are the only 2 novels. These are the only ones. And they're so good that I really need more. But yeah, so Celeste Ng primarily writes contemporary fiction about like small town Midwestern settings, and just like really digs into the family. So this novel is about a Chinese American family in the 1970s in Ohio, and basically, this is no spoiler, like this is on the back of the cover. They lose one of their daughters, so you find out that their daughter is dead, but nobody like has found out yet, so you kind of follow along with this family while they find out about the death of the oldest sibling, Lydia, or the oldest daughter, Lydia, and she's kind of the favorite child, and everyone's kind of subtly aware of that, and you sort of like dive into the family dynamics while they deal with their grief, but then you also go back in time and kind of watch their family dynamics before this tragedy happened. And yeah, I'm really excited about it because, as I said, I love Celeste Ng's books, but I'm also kind of sad about it because I know that once I read this, I'm not going to have any more Celeste Ng books. So maybe I'll have to do a reread or something, but yeah, this is the first book on the list. It's not very long, and I really think I'm going to love it based on how I felt about her previous book. And the next book that I'm kind of in the mood for is a thriller, like a mystery thriller. I don't know, I'm kind of looking for something a little bit fast-paced to start the year, and the one that I picked off of my shelves that I've owned for a while, but I hadn't picked up yet, and then I saw some people talking about it, so I was like, okay, maybe this is the time, and that is The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. I don't know a ton about this, but I know that I've been hearing people talk about it for a while, and I, initially liked the sound of it enough to pick it up, but I just never, like, actually read it. But essentially what it's about is this man, Owen Michaels, disappears, and he has just gotten remarried to a woman, and he basically, like, smuggles this note to her that says, "Protect her," after he disappears. And she's like, who? What? Hello? And she knows that he's talking about his 16-year-old daughter, Bailey, who he had from a previous marriage. But Bailey and Hannah, the woman that Owen was married to, don't get along. So she's kind of like, how am I supposed to do this? Like, how am I supposed to get along with this kid? And then Owen continues to be missing, but then the FBI arrests Owen's boss, and like stuff starts to get a little sketchy. And so Hannah is kind of like, what is going on? And because she's trying to get to know Bailey, she like goes off on this journey with Bailey to figure out what happened to Owen. And I just feel like it intrigues me because there's like a good mystery component. Like I feel like that's an interesting mystery that I would be like interested in reading about, like a fast-paced mystery vibe. Yeah, I'm super interested in it. I've heard really good things about it, like I said, and it's not very long, so I feel like that combined with how fast-paced it'll probably be, like any thriller, I think it'll just be really cool. And it talks about like big plot twists that it has, and I love a good plot twist. I love being caught off guard by a plot twist. So yeah, it says, Hannah and Bailey set out to discover the truth, but as they start putting together the pieces of Owen's past, they soon realize they are also building a new future, one neither of them could have anticipated. So I feel like the reason I'm really excited to read this is because there's the thriller mystery component that excites me, but then also I love the fact that there's like a relationship building component and like a family dynamic component involved in the thriller. So those are like my favorite kind of thrillers, are the ones where you're really getting into a family dynamic. As you can probably tell by how much I love Celeste Ng, I love reading about family dynamics, parent-child dynamics, sibling dynamics, which isn't a part of this, but I just love to read about them anyways. Yeah, so I figure this might have like a chance to become like one of my favorite thrillers. I haven't read a ton of them in the past, and probably my favorite thriller that I read last year was like less of a thriller and more of just a spooky book, which was The Haunting of Hill House. But in terms of like classic thriller, I read The Maidens by Alex Michaelides, and I liked it a lot, but there was something missing for me, and I think it was like the dynamics. Like if you've read the book, you kind of know, but like something about the dynamics didn't feel that believable to me. Whereas I feel like this could have really believable family dynamics, which excites me. So yeah, that's The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. Okay, now the next one that's on my list, I feel like I had kind of like a mirror image way of building this TBR, because I have sort of a contemporary fiction and then like a mystery thriller, and then the next two on the list are also like a contemporary fiction and a mystery thriller. So I don't know, something was in the water with those two genres this month. I was gonna say this semester. Oh my god, I'm not ready to go back to school. But okay, so the next book that's on the TBR is The 10-Year Nap by Meg Wolitzer. I like the cover of this book a lot. And this one I bought over the summer and just like never picked up. It kind of gave me more winter vibes. And so I was kind of saving it until now. But something about like how into contemporary fiction I've been recently made me want to pick it up. And also because I heard someone give a really good review of another Meg Wolitzer book. I'm not sure which one it was, but it was like a dark academia one, more about college-aged women. Whereas this book is very different. It's about a group of 4 friends in New York who are like in their adult lives. So it says, for a group of 4 New York friends, the past decade has been defined largely by marriage and motherhood, but it wasn't always that way. Growing up, they had been told that their generation would be different, and for a while this was true. They went to good colleges and began high-powered careers, but after marriage and babies, for a variety of reasons, they decided to stay home temporarily to raise their children. Now, 10 years later, they're still at home, unsure how they came to inhabit lives so different from the ones they expected, until a new series of events begins to change the landscape of their lives yet again, in ways they couldn't have predicted. And something about that just sounds so good to me. I think it's because I've been so intrigued by like motherhood, like in like family dynamics of mothers specifically. Like in Celeste Ng's books, she tends to dive into the backstories of the mothers in the different families that she's looking at, and I've been finding that so interesting. And that it calls out to me about this for sure. But also the idea that these women have felt themselves becoming a little bit like stuck in their lives, in their lives looking different than they expected them to be, but then something shaking that up for them. And I'm curious to see like how they react to that and what the dynamic is between the friend group as that happens. And the third reason why I picked this up is because I am graduating from college in May and I'm about to start a career. And I think it's kind of interesting to read books about the phase of life that you're headed towards as opposed to the phase of life that you're in sometimes, because I feel like people in a phase of life ahead of you can be more reflective and like have more thoughtful things to say about the phase of life that you're currently in. So it seems as though these women are going to look back with an interesting perspective on the years of their life that they spent in these high-powered careers, you know, running around, being young, and like their lives before these kinds of family dynamics emerged. And I'm really curious to see how that plays out. It's a little bit chunkier for a contemporary fiction, which I like because I feel like we're going to get more time to spend with the characters. Yeah, and I've just heard a lot of really good things about it. I found it. Okay, the book that I heard someone review by Meg Wolitzer before this one was Sleepwalking, which is one of her big first novels, and it's it's like dark academia, like girls on a college campus in a friend group kind of situation. I've heard it's similar to The Secret History, but like less complicated, which could be nice. I haven't like fully finished The Secret History, but I feel like it could be cool to have an option that's like a little bit more accessible. But yeah, that's why I initially picked it up, was because I heard so many good things about Meg Wolitzer's previous writing, but I hadn't heard anything about this book. So I've never heard anyone talk about this, but I have heard people talk about this author. And I think it'll just be a really interesting look at like family dynamics, and also like what it is like to be a woman and like balance those aspirations of career and family, which is something that I think about sometimes, but like obviously not the phase that I'm in. So I just think it would be an interesting lens into a different phase of life. But yeah, that is Meg Wolitzer's The 10-Year Nap. I also think the title is kind of funny. Okay, so that's those. And then the last book on the TBR for this month is Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. And this book has been on a few TBRs by now, and I still haven't gotten to it, and I don't know why, because I hear nothing but good things. So I'm kind of trying to prioritize it this month, and if not this month, then February. But I'm hopeful, and I'm not going to say that I'm not going to get to it, because I'm going to get to it. I'm determined. So this is like a unique Agatha Christie novel because it doesn't have a specific detective. It's more so about a group of 10 people that are lured to an isolated island mansion by a mysterious figure called UN Owen. So they all don't know each other, but they've all been summoned here by the same person. And then at dinner, there's like a recorded message that accuses them each of having a secret. And then by the end of the night, one of the guests is dead. So then they get stranded by a storm. And then, like, counting down one by one, each of them, like, starts to die. So it's, like, sort of process of elimination. And I'm so intrigued by that setup for a murder mystery. Like, that kind of way of revealing who's up to, like, who's up to something. Yeah, so it says, which among them is the killer and will any of them survive? And I have never read anything by Agatha Christie, but obviously she is, like, so famous, and, like, I've always wanted to read something by her. And this one just seemed like it would intrigue me the most in terms of, like, I feel like reading this and then getting into her, like, detective-specific stories would be the way to go. I mean, I'll probably be able to say for sure after I read it, but I thought that this author's note in the beginning of the book was really interesting and made me more excited to read it, so that's why I ended up putting it back on the TBR for January, because it was initially like on the TBR for previous months and I hadn't gotten to it, so I was kind of like, maybe I should just take a break from it. But I read this note and I was like, okay, this is really cool. So it says, I had written this book because it was so difficult to do that the idea had fascinated me. 10 people had to die without it becoming ridiculous or the murderer becoming obvious. I wrote the book after a tremendous amount of planning, and I was pleased with what I had made of it. It was clear, straightforward, baffling, and yet had a perfectly reasonable explanation. In fact, it had to have an epilogue in order to explain it. It was well received and reviewed, but the person who was really pleased with it was myself, for I knew better than any critic how difficult it had been. Isn't that just cute? Like, she's just talking about how, like, I'm really proud of myself because this was hard, and I set out to do something difficult, and then it ended up, like, going well. And I just thought that was sweet. So I really want to read this one, and I feel like I said, I've been kind of in the mood for this, like, switching off, like, contemporary fiction mystery thriller. And so I feel like this month might be the month that I actually get to it. But, you know, I mean, obviously you never know. And again, classes start this month, but I'm optimistic. I feel like I can do it, and I'm excited. So, yeah, that is my TBR for the month of January. I'm really pumped about it, and I will let you know how it goes in my January wrap-up. Let you know if I got to all of these, if I got to different books, if I ended up listening to an audiobook memoir, or what I ended up reading this month, but I'm super excited looking at this pile. So, happy reading. I hope you have a really happy January reading month. Yeah, and thank you so much for coming to my Reading Nook, and I will see you next time. Bye!